Hi there, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this podcast, I interview successful business leaders and industry experts to help you grow your business. I truly believe that sometimes single insight can completely change your business directions and allow you to achieve your business goals. In this episode, my guest is owner of two companies, Two Penny Consulting and Two Penny Publishing. He's an international speaker, he's a pastor, and he's a best-selling author of 4 books. His first book is Blind Potential. Second one is MentorU. Third one is ReFocus, and the fourth one is MentorUS. He's also a podcast host as well. Now, we had a discussion around the very important topics around the business and leadership. Tom's been helping business leaders for last, over 10 years to navigate some of those challenges and how to look for opportunity in those challenges. He talks about some of those opportunities lies in those challenges as well. One of the topics very important to business leaders is brain health or mental health these days, because a lot of people are dealing with that, especially what we've gone through for the last few years with the disruption and a lot of stress that people have gone through. So, he's expert on that topic. He talks about how our brain works and, how to understand some of those chemicals that work in the brain as well. He also talks about how to help somebody if somebody's dealing with some of those challenges as well. So I think you're going to enjoy that discussion, especially when he talks about, a step-by-step process, how to deal with some of those critical, very difficult challenges around the brain health issues and work environment issue at workplace as well. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, make sure you click the like button and subscribe to this channel for future videos. Until next time, please welcome my guest, Tom Goodlet. Hi guys, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. Today my guest is Tom Goodlet. Tom, the discussion, we are looking at business leadership is, we all struggling with a lot of challenges, especially what we've gone through for the last few years. Everybody's trying to solve these problems, and I'm hoping that, your insight, you've been helping business leaders to deal with a lot of challenges. So I'm looking forward to a discussion, sharing that with the audience, and thank you so much for time today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
So walk us through where you see for the last few years where we've gone through, with all that, the COVID and all that economic disruption, business leaders, they have a tons of problems to solve. Where you see the biggest challenges are from your thoughts, Tom?
Yeah, I think the ones that are winning, the businesses that are winning are asking a question of how can we go more digital and at the same time more personal. And
Yeah.
Sometimes we think that's like either or, like if we go digital, we can't be personal, but especially since the pandemic and all that, the companies that are asking, how can we do both and get better at both those ends? I think those are the smart companies. Those are the ones that seem to be advancing and to do that. And I'll throw in this too. The other companies, the ones that they did well in 2020 and in 2021, they focused on some of the universal needs of people. That's something I've seen as well. And so whenever we can kind of hone in and focus in on universal needs of people, that's a helpful thing. I don't know, are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I think that was done, many decades ago, but there's a lot of truth to that, in that as human beings, we need physiological needs, for one. And so I think you look at some of the organizations where, their stock prices went up during the pandemic, or, they had some good quarters. They a lot of their advertising, a lot of their efforts were spent, sending meals to first responders, or helping people who are out of work, and all of a sudden people would get excited, and then the next study in the hierarchy of needs is, all right, if I feel like I'm getting my physiological needs, the next thing is safety. And of course, been in a world where we've felt unsafe, and we wanted to sure up that safety. And so different companies who emphasize safety, you watch their stock prices go up and them do better over the long haul. And then I think this one's a key one, is the third part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is we all have a desire to belong. There's belong. Mm-hmm. So if we have physiological needs met, if we have our safety needs met, we feel safe enough, around people or with an organization, then we do have a desire to belong, even if it means, interacting with products and services with organizations. We look for we look for, are we Walmart shoppers or are we Target shoppers? We look for different businesses to almost feel like we belong to and help identify ourselves, and to do that. And if we like the organizations with which we belong to, then we look, well, how can we contribute? How can we add value to them? And that affects our esteem. We measure how well we're doing that. And so if we feel good about what Amazon is doing or what they're doing through Amazon Smile, then we will tell others about it. We will make sure we buy products through it. We will feel like we're part of it. Not only do we belong, but we'll feel like we're being helpful, we're adding value. And then the last one on that hierarchy is kind of, where do we fit within the universe? Are we a part of something that feels bigger than ourselves? And so I think you can look at like companies. One of my favorites is Subaru. I just think they've had it for a while, but it really seemed to click around COVID, this whole idea of love makes a Subaru. It's not a mechanical team that puts together a vehicle, but they did a lot of advertising on how they were sending meals to first responders, and they were using DoorDash, so they were feeding people and in a safe way, and you could help them do it and belong to the Subaru family by owning a Subaru. And that would, a certain portion of your car payment would be contributing to a bigger cause in the world of feeding first responders. And so there's a lot of companies that I think really honed in and still, I think it's not going away. These are universal needs of human beings. And so a lot of times when we can, even in our marketing and in the way we do business, hone in on and show that we understand and we've listened to the needs of people, we're able to make it feel at least more personal as we go more digital. And so that's just in a nutshell, really quickly, some great things I saw in the companies that excelled during the pandemic. That's
all of us, what you just mentioned, whether it's a need to belonging or whether to be, part of bigger cause. But I agree that last few years all of that was challenged. When we work from home, people had a need. So all of that was challenged. So where you see the people trying to, figure out new ways of doing that, whether, you're working on a digitally, remotely, or working in an office, you still want to be part of a belonging of a team. So where you see that some of the, ideas people use or what, method they use to, even though, with all the disruption, they're still trying to stay on top of these things.
Sure. And it's funny because I still work with clients that are, the pandemic, all it did was bring some obvious things to the forefront. It took some things that are already true and just made them blatantly true. And so some things that I saw, you talked about working from home. All of a sudden, I wish I bought stock in Zoom, right before the pandemic. Why not? We're all doing this now. But how many of us are still doing this? In other words, we found out that we can communicate, we can get our message across, and we can do it via Zoom. But what's interesting, or Google, Microsoft Teams or Google Meet or what, so you have all these platforms now that have blown up. But what I think is interesting, that we learned it, and so I think companies are still doing this. We're realizing, okay, people want to add value and feel that they belong. Not too many people wake up and going, man, I really want to stink at my job today. So most people want to do a good job, even if it's from home. And so what I've noticed is that there's some companies yes, we've used Zoom, we've allowed people to work from home. We've still continued to do that because we've seen the byproduct of people doing that. And it's good and it's healthy. But we also have Zoom protocol. The idea that, you're doing a podcast right now, we're using video.
Yeah, we wouldn't have connected without these technologies, right?
Right. But the fact that we could go on audio, and I'm sure there's a version of audio, but even now that we can go video, the more we can see each other, the more we can see face to face, the more we can see eye to eye, is the idea. The more we just started having Zoom protocol when this was happening, where we're going, okay, if you are on a Zoom call, make sure your camera's on. Yeah. We want to see, because here's the truth. It's our words are important, but there's so much more to our words, and that is our body language, our tone. And so we've learned, okay, we can communicate in great ways and efficient ways, again, we can go digital, but we also need to keep a few things personal. We need to make sure we can see each other, see our facial expressions, see the icon, and we realize that we can connect better with that. And so that's why I think video platforms have taken off so much. It's also why I think we have emojis in our, the words and the text are not enough. We need some sort of face, some sort of something to let the people know, that are reading it, what is our body language if they were there to see it, or what is our facial expression, and what might be the tone behind our words. And so again, that's a universal thing that all of a sudden pushed to the forefront, and we went more digital. And at the same time, we looked for ways to make that digital more personal. And so I think a lot of companies that have done that and then have stayed there, including my own. I own a couple companies, and so 2020 gave us the opportunity to go more and more digital, which we ended up reaching more and more people, across the nation. And at the same time, we were pushing to go, okay, well, how can we make sure they feel included, feel like they belong, feel like they feel liked and loved in some way. And because we all have those needs. And sure enough, companies are continuing to discover more and more ways to show they care about their clients, but still through a digital means. And the more we're able to do that and interact, I mean, better and better it'll get.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Tom, what you just mentioned. Yeah, early when the whole pandemic started, everybody rushed to Zoom and Teams. Now we're thinking, well, we can be same as productive as we were in the office, if not more, right? So we all started the meetings. Where soon we realized that we started missing that human connection, right? So yeah, with the meetings are working, everything's good. Where is that human connection? What you just mentioned, where is the communication, right? So I think that is the second phase. We've gone through that simply. Hey, we need that human connection, right? So you can build that digitally, or you can build that in a person, but you need a different skill set to build that connection, right? So where you think that leadership, even managing people is a different way of managing it when you're in an office, different way of managing when you're Zoom. So is that a skill set that you have to sharpen your skill set for the communication, or what people have to do in order to get better at it?
Yeah. So yeah, let me throw out two ideas with that. So let's be honest too. I mean, we can communicate like this, and this is great. Would it be better in person? Probably. I mean, we can never kind of take away that, to be in the presence of somebody. There's, but what we learned is we can get pretty close, or we can get a lot out of it if we try to do that. And so one of the things I'm seeing companies do, by the way, is especially ones that have kind of realized they don't need as much brick and mortar, they don't need as much, place for people to be. So instead of paying rent or on a building, or leasing a place for their business to exist, for everybody to congregate and work, instead they're taking that money and they're allowing people to work from home, but then they're spending some of that money to have events and things where people can come together. It doesn't always have to be at the same place. I mean, you can make it fun. You can do what you have, but it's a cost savings for one, because it's a lot cheaper for a couple times a year to get everybody together than it is to pay for a building that people may dread even coming to. And so I've seen a couple organizations make that pivot, where they're going, we still need times where we're all together, where we're in each other's presence, but it doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be every day. And so, and man, if we didn't have to pay for that electricity or that lease, or if we didn't have to pay for that, then we could save the money and we can have some quality interactions where we're all in each other's presence. And so I've seen some companies do that. And I think that's a wise pivot, and definitely an economical pivot. But I don't want to take away from, just because we can meet digital doesn't mean we should never try to be, present with each other. I think there's a high value in that. But you also mentioned, though, in terms of how we communicate with people. And so, yes, I think that's, again, COVID helps it rise to the surface, but it was always kind of there. And so I think there's some universal ideas even in communication and skills within communication, and especially when we talk about leadership development, a high skill development area is going to be how we talk to each other. But one of the ones that's most often neglected that I find is how we show we listen to one another. And so, and that is a skill, because typically the way our brains work, or the way we've seen it done, is we just try to get our words out and make sure the other person gets what we're saying without first acknowledging we understand what they're saying. And it's amazing how much the brain can, how productive it can be when we feel understood by the people around us. when we feel like the person, whether on the other end of the call or the other side of the room, we feel like they understand what we're thinking, what we're feeling. And it's amazing how much more productive. And in fact, we know even in our brains, how much harder our brains will work for that person.
Yeah.
Just if we feel that. And so really in the ways we communicate, I would say listening is and demonstrating that we listen and that we understand it's a skill build. It's a huge skill build, but one of the most important parts, if not the most important part of communication. I'll put it this way: you don't earn the right to confront somebody unless you first demonstrate that you have heard them and understand them.
I mean, that to your point, I think that's a great point. People have gone through so much, on a personal level, on a financial level, or family level, on many different angles, right? And I think listening to their challenges has become a lot more critical. I find that in the teams that, when we were in office, somebody has a problem, you could be doing something else, you can still listen to each other, right? So it's the body language is different. But on a digital, you can't be doing that. You got to pay attention. You got to make sure you understand completely that, you're not missing any clues. But I think to your point, that definitely, when we go through meetings, sometimes you don't understand, you don't completely, comprehend what's going on. But, just making a phone call and understanding other person, I think that the empathy has become one of the top item that, you got to pay attention to other people.
Yeah. I mean, So there's a difference between sympathy and empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Sympathy is, I agree with you. Empathy is, I understand you. So sometimes we have this misidea that in order for our brains to be at peace or feel connected to somebody else, that we think they have to agree with us. But that's not how our brains are wired. And the way our brains are wired, we need people to understand us. They don't necessarily have to agree with us. I mean, you can understand what somebody is thinking and feeling, and they will like you. And you never once told them you agreed with the situation they're in, or whether they deserve it or didn't. But we feel more connected when we have that empathy, when we have that understanding. In fact, we will hire people. So if we have, again, empathy, I believe, is a skill. And so it's something we can develop. It's something we can develop stronger. It's actually the part of our brain that deals with empathy. It's the slowest part of our brain to develop. So it takes a lot of repetition and a lot of purpose in its development. But we can get better at empathy. And a lot of that is just how well we can measure our own and other people's emotions and deal with those and acknowledge those. And so if we call that, let's call that EQ. That's a popular term now. Let's call it our emotional quotient. We hire EQ over IQ all the time. In other words, I mean, we want a doctor as a high IQ that knows about medicine, that knows about medical procedures, but we will go with the doctor who seems to better diagnose us because they can listen and understand what we're going through. We will go with the doctor as the better bedside manner, who we feel like he gets us, he gets what's going on, or she gets us, and we'll go with that. We want an accountant who has, they're smart. That's great if they have a great IQ and they know about the tax laws, they know about money, but we'll go with the accountant who seems to understand what we want to do with our money. I mean, you go down the line, any profession, banker, we want to go with the one, not who's super smart, but who's has enough empathy and intuition and is able to listen to us, understands what we're trying to do with our finances and where we're trying to go. So again, we will hire EQ over IQ.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll share this. There was a study. So I live in the Tampa Bay area. There was a study done in the Tampa Bay area a couple of years back. And they interviewed a bunch of people and basically said, what would it take for you to buy a product or service from somebody? The number one answer, 39% of them said that the salesperson was kind, friendly, and understanding. That was the number one thing. So the second most popular answer, 19%, less than half, was that the salesperson knew a lot about the product they were selling. So, and by the way, 6% was that it was the best price in town. We will pay more for people who seem to get us, for people who we seem to connect with. They seem to understand us. We will pay. They don't even have to know about the product, and we have a better chance. If they seem kind, friendly, and understanding, we'll go with them and feel great about it. And so empathy is everything. EQ is everything. And again, it's a skill. It's way easier to build your IQ than it is to build your EQ. And so it takes repetition, takes skill, and
so very interesting. So
Yeah.
So the question, how do you build the skill set? What is going to take, has that changed over the last few years with the going to digital, or is it the same skill set? So how do you develop the skill set?
Yeah. So great question. So has it changed going digital? No, the same thing. Again, these are some of the same universal things that work. It's just now we can do it not just in person. We can do these same skills and do this digitally and use these same skills or even on a phone call and use as much of them as possible. And the beauty about these skills is it doesn't have to be a one conversation. In other words, understanding can continue. If you say something or I say something on this and it cues something or a thought, or we didn't quite say it right, or we wanted to show we were better listeners, we can pick up the phone and call each other and say, hey, that conversation didn't go as well as I thought it might want to. And then try to reapply these skills. So going to your great question, how do we get these skills? Well, you're setting me up to plug what I do. So I work with organizations, particularly on we call it high-end leadership skills, but much of it has to do with how do we communicate. So there's it's a 3-day course. It actually comes out of San Diego, California, called Leader Effectiveness Training. And the guy who put together this course, his name's Thomas Gordon, Dr. Thomas Gordon, and he was first a student and then a colleague and an associate of a guy named Carl Rogers. So if you recognize Carl Rogers, if you ever take in college a psychology class, Carl Rogers, he's considered one of the fathers of modern psychology. So with Carl Rogers, him and Thomas Gordon, what they discover is that often the person with the problem is in the best position to come up with the best solution to solve their problem. So let me say it again. Often the person with the problem is in the best position to come up with the best solution for the problem. But typically in our workspaces, we go, oh, you have a problem. I'm your boss. Now let me take care of your problem. And we solve other people's problems way too much. We handicap them. We create bottlenecking within the organization because they can't make a move without us because we think we're the hero and we have to rescue people and we have to do this. And we become clumsy comforters by trying to solving everybody else's problem. But what Rogerian theory says, if you have a problem and you come to me with your problem, you have the most information about your problem. So if I give you a solution that you have to go with for your problem, it's probably a pretty dumb solution because I have the least amount of information for your problem. And so my goal, if I truly want to help you, isn't to solve your problem, but to help guide you so that you are in a position to better solve your problem. And so
I'm guilty of this as well. Every time my staff comes to me, my first reaction is, let me solve your problems, right? But I think your point is well taken. Definitely great point that all you need to is to facilitate that, but that takes time and work, right? Sometimes we just, we don't have a time. Let me give you a solution, just run with it and go solve the problems instead of me trying to, facilitate that, right? So I'm guilty of that, as well, providing solutions all the time.
Yes. And you're right. It does take work. And that's why we do at Two Penny Consultant, we do a 3-day intensive course where we learn the skills, we learn the type of conversations to have, we learn the systems that work in those type of conversations to make sure you're not what we call roadblocking, but instead you're opening up the conversation and setting it up so the person with the problem is in the best position to then solve it. You're not enabling people to come to you whenever they have a problem, you're empowering them to be able to solve their own problems. And it actually saves time in the long run and ups productivity. And so we work on that, but it takes 3 days. It takes 3 days to learn it and to wrestle through it. And we do a lot of repetition. And again, it's the slowest part of your brain to develop. And even after that, there's several organizations I work with, and we'll go back a year later and do a 1-day refresher. And we're working on that part of the brain. But you're right. The natural reaction we have is to kind of protect, is to save the person, our ego gets involved. Sometimes we want to be the hero and to feel like it's almost like we feel like I'm not helping if I'm not fixing. If you've been married, how many times have you found yourself in the conversation where your wife's going, I don't want you to fix it. I want you to
listen.
Listen. Exactly right. Right. And the more we try to fix it, the worse it gets. Well, it's not just our wives, it's other people. And so it's a part of our brain that can develop, and it's EQ, it's our emotional intelligence. When somebody else is going through a problem, do we allow them to own it? And we can still help them all the same while allowing them to own it. And so there's certain language we use, certain skills we use, certain skills we teach and adapt, and it starts with listening.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: if you start with listening, if you get listening down, then you can start working on confronting. In other words, what do you do when somebody, when you have a problem and it's based off of somebody else's behavior, and you want to go ahead and get that behavior adjusted? Well, we have a language and a skill for that. But again, you don't earn the right to confront unless you first demonstrate that you can listen. And so,
very important.
Yeah.
Wow. Definitely, I think it's in industries as well. We in the industry, in our business, we solve problems all the time, because we are a technology company. We solve technical problems. When somebody has other than technical problem, we don't differentiate. We apply the same approach. He has a problem. Here's a solution for it, right? So, I think it's a great point that you got to listen first before you even jump to problems. So definitely we do that. So one part is me learning is as from a business or a leadership standpoint and getting better at it. So how do I also teach this the same skill set to my team as well? So they have the team leads and they have other staff reporting to them, so they can get better at it and they can go from there as well.
Yeah, great question. So a lot of times when we're doing these 3-day trainings, we've got typically the CEO as well as all the managers and supervisors, and especially the higher up in leadership you can start, the more you can trickle it down, kind of thing too. But so a lot of times I'll work in organizations and we start with there's 20, 30 people at a time in the room. And you practice with each other and you hold each other accountable to it. So the more people who get it within your culture, the more your culture adjusts, the more it changes, the more it becomes a positive culture where people want to work. So typically like to start with the top on down. That's a smart way to go. And typically there's a better bang for your buck, we'll say, to get if the people who have a lot of control over the culture, which is actually every employee, but obviously when you're higher on the org chart, you can definitely wreck a culture a lot quicker than somebody lower on the org chart. So typically you get as many people going through it at the same time as possible, but you can kind of build it. But even if there's only one of you who knows, kind of, we'll call it the leader effectiveness training skills, who knows certain things like how to listen, how to confront, and there's problem solving involved in that as well, and how to do that and navigate that and use those skills, it already makes it a better relationship, whoever's on the other end. Because at least one of you's got the good skills and can help navigate a great conversation or some great problem-solving exercises as well to do that.
Beautiful. Great. So, every change becomes, you got to manage the change in a company. So where you see, when somebody goes through this journey with you, Tom, where you see some of that roadblocks are where people kind of struggle, when they're going through this change in a company, where you see some of that obstacles?
That's a great question. So we tend to use the skills that we've seen used, right? Or we tend to, so a lot of times if you bring up the idea of confronting somebody or confrontation, typically the words that come into our head are negative words. And why? Because when somebody confronted us, they used terrible skills and it was such a poor experience. It damaged the relationship, it damaged our morale, it made us rethink our life choices or whether or not we ever want to look in that person in the face again. And so we tend to go with the skills that we learn. And so a lot of times, even so let's say somebody else has a problem. A lot of times we jump to skills, and sometimes they're poor skills that it's just what we've learned. We do what we know. And so one of them that doesn't sound terrible, but it doesn't really help is reassuring. So if you tell me, Tom, I'm having such a terrible time with my company right now and things are terrible. And I go, you know what? Don't worry. It's going to get better. It'll get better. You'll be okay. It doesn't really solve your problem or set you up to solve a problem. It just kind of, in some ways, just diverts the conversation or it blocks the conversation. But that's a pretty popular one. A lot of times we just want to reassure people, or we'll compliment them, or we'll say, well, it's not going to be that bad, or you're a smart guy, you'll figure it out. but it, again, doesn't really help people. It shuts down the conversation, and we do it not typically out of great intentions, but that's a common one that'll quickly do it. I'll throw in another one. We actually identify, we have a list of 12 roadblocks that we identify, 12 common roadblocks. And so we identify and work through them and do that. Another really common one is advising. In other words, when people have problems and they come to us, we go, well, obviously you brought it to me because you want my advice. You want my great knowledge. You want me to, tell you all the things to do. That's a natural assumption to do that. But most often when people have a problem, especially if they are in kind of a panic state, if you can read the body language, if they're fearful, if they're upset, it's not a great time to give them advice. We need to, again, when we feel understood, we tend to get quieter and calmer when we feel like the other person understands it. And then maybe we're in a decent spot where maybe that's a good place to give advice. But when we don't feel understood, we tend to get louder and more emotional. We tend to go, you obviously can't hear what I'm thinking, and don't understand. So let me do it at a higher volume. Or you obviously can't feel what I'm feeling. So let me make it more emotional. And when you see people get upset, it's because they don't feel understood. And so like our natural inclination to get louder and to get more upset. And but if somebody starts to understand us, our natural inclination is to get calmer and quieter, and our brain calms down, actually moves from what's the cerebellum, the back part of the brain. We start moving into the front part of the brain where our problem solving does its best. In fact, we are on average 18 IQ points dumber in the back part of our brain.
Wow. Okay.
So if you think about it, when, some of the dumbest choices we made in our life are typically when we were angry,
emotional,
anxious, or we were anemic, we were drained. And we were literally making dumber decisions in a dumber part of our brain. And no one would understand. So we, tried to make these decisions, and we look back at life and go, oh, man, I wish I never said that. I wish I never did that. And so again, this is you're building brain skills. And so how can we quickly move from the back part of the brain to the front part of the brain where we can be smarter, we can more problem solve and to do that. But we need to feel understood in order to do that. But anyway, the common one is if you're flustered and you're frustrated, then you probably don't want my advice right now. In fact, I was having breakfast with a friend at a restaurant, and he was going through something. I didn't know all of it, but you could just see it on his face. He was going through something, and a mutual friend spotted us from across the restaurant, came over, overheard a little of the conversation, and he started telling this guy, he says, "Hey, you know what you need to do?" And the guy who's going through is like, "Hey, now's not really a good time." He's like, no, hear me out. This is what you need to go do. He's like, "No, now is not a good time." He's like, no, just listen. And he started just giving all this advice. And I'm just watching my friend go from sad to mad. Like this guy, he went from being a friend to being a jerk because it's not a great time. It doesn't matter what he said, even if it's good advice. He is not in a place the guy with the problem is not a place to receive it right then and there. And he needed to be understood what's going on, what's he going through. And then if he's calmed down, then might be an opportune time to share advice. But that's a popular one, to just start, oh, you're upset. Let me tell you what to do. Let me tell you how to fix this and to do that.
So the front of your brain is a lot more logical, a lot more, the problem solving. What you're saying is the back of the brain is all emotions and all that stuff, right? So
sort of close. So think of it in 3 parts. Think of the brain in 3 parts. So you got the front part of your brain. It's a lot of times when we think about, when we call people brainy, or we think about the brain, we're talking about this part of our brain, the cerebral cortex or the frontal lobe. So think of the frontal lobe. By the way, you can know if you're in that part of your brain. If you feel, I'll give you 3 P words. If you feel positive, you're feeling good. If you feel like you're a problem solver, you can solve anything that comes your way. And if you feel productive, all right, because that's the part of the brain we kind of focus in, get things going. We measure this. This is much more IQ driven. Yeah. Much more IQ. It's also where the part of the brain where we get our words, our vocabulary. It's why a lot of times when we're feeling really upset, it shows up more non-verbally than verbally. It's more like, it's grunts and stuff, because we don't have words. We're upset. We're in the back part of the brain. So front part of the brain, there's words. The other thing about the front part of the brain is it's driven and powered by a chemical family called oxytocin. So So oxytocin, it's a bonding chemical. Okay. Oxytocin is released whenever skin touches skin. And so let's say even like in a business deal, better to go for a handshake than a fist bump. The more skin touches skin, the more we feel bonded and connected to people. And so, and it's a healthy chemical. It makes sure blood's going evenly to all the parts of our body and to do this. And so when we're in the front part of the brain, we feel more bonded and connected to the people around us. So we feel you get belonging, and we can add value. Yeah, we feel positive, we feel productive, and we feel healthy. It's why happier people generally are healthier people. They call in less, sick to work or whatever. So we know that. So what happens is, and it would be great if we made every decision from that. But the way I'll use this my arm as an example. We'll say my forearm is our brain stem. Okay. So as we get information, as you're hearing me, as you're seeing me, all those neurons, all this is grabbing all that information, going up into my brainstem and up into my brain. Now, before it can make it to my cerebral cortex, that top front part of the brain, it starts in what's called the limbic system. It's a smaller internal part of the brain called the limbic system. Now, the cerebral cortex is measured in IQ, how well we think. The limbic system would be measured in EQ, how well we feel.
Okay.
And so the limbic system has a decision to make. If you feel good, so right now, if you're feeling good about our conversation, then you'll go into the high part of the brain, and you'll listen, and you'll receive, and you'll contribute, and you'll do that. If I say something, I don't know, and all of a sudden it offends you, or you don't feel so good about me, you're going to the back part of the brain. You're going to the cerebellum, which
the emotion. Okay.
Yeah. And so the limbic system is really where we manage and move. It kind of makes the decision, depending on how we feel, where are we going to process this information.
Got you. Okay.
If we feel good, the limbic system shoots it to the front part of the brain. We don't feel good, shoots it to the back part of the brain, and we're making dumber decisions. And so really our EQ is measured within the limbic system, and the limbic system can be developed. We know that. It's just the slowest part of the brain to develop. And so sometimes we get this idea that as human beings, we are thinking beings who sometimes feel. But the way our brains are wired, all the information goes into the feeling center first. So as human beings, we're not thinking beings who sometimes feel. We are feeling beings who sometimes think.
I got you.
Yeah. And so, if something terrible happens to you right now, it doesn't matter the rest of our conversation. We're not going to have a good one, right? Because you're not feeling great. And and that'll determine that.
So is that part of the brain also addictive as well, Tom? Look at social media and all those technology, it producing the dopamine in a brain, is that also back of the brain where they produce all that stuff and is addictive? Is that what is logical? Okay.
You're right on it. Yeah. So let's say I don't feel good about something, it shoots it to the cerebellum, the reptile brain. And typically I'm back there and it's making split-second decisions to do one of three things. It's fight, flight, or freeze. Okay. Yeah. So, if I feel unsafe at some point, all of a sudden back part of my brain, I'm not going to process and think. I talk about it as if, let's say you're sitting down at a restaurant, you're at, there's a bunch of windows there and you can see cars from the street. And sure enough, you see a truck coming straight at you right there. You don't want to go to that front part of the brain and go, what's the make and model in that truck? That's an interesting color. My mom she likes it, right? You don't want any processing there. You want it to shoot to the back part of the brain and go fight, get out of the way, or get behind something and freeze, brace for the hit. And so we want that to happen. It's just sometimes our brain overreacts. And so yes, when we're in the back part of the brain, it's okay to be there now and then because it's a life-saving part of our brain. And so it's fight, flight, or freeze. If we don't feel good about something, shoots back there, and that makes quick decisions in order to try and save our life. And that's the purpose. The problem is when we stay back there. We don't want to stay there for a long term. So if something upsets us, it's going to go back to the back part of the brain. But we need that limbic system to help take it, to start moving it to the front part of the brain so we can make better choices about how we're going to resolve it. If we stay in that back part of the brain, in fact, you can know you're in the back part of the brain if you feel anxious, if you feel angry, and if you feel anemic, you feel drained, because your brain burns more calories than any other organ in your body. That's why you can sit at a desk all day and go home exhausted. Like, I didn't even stand up. I didn't lift anything. It doesn't matter. Your brain burns a lot of calories, which means it's always trying to take a break. Remember the chemical family that was for the front part of the brain was oxytocin. You feel bonded, even blood to the body. Well, in the back part of the brain, it's adrenaline is the chemical family there. So adrenaline doesn't, well, I mean, it gets you going, right? It does that. So there is kind of a thing like that. So yeah, it can be addictive. It's kind of like, sometimes we'll consume media that makes us afraid. If you watch the news for so long, like, oh, or it'll make you angry. And so there's kind of this false sense of, it gets my blood boiling, and so we can get addicted to that. Yes, absolutely. We can get addicted to the adrenaline. The problem, and so if we stay angry, if we stay anxious, or fearful, it'll mess. Yeah, it shoots adrenaline, but adrenaline doesn't make sure all the blood gets evenly to the body. Adrenaline makes sure all the blood goes to your arms, all to your legs. It's why you hear those stories of the mother who could lift the car off the child in that moment, because all the blood ran there, all the adrenaline came, and to do that, which is great for emergencies. That's where you want it. But if you live there, it's unhealthy. So it's not even, it's not getting to all the other parts of your body. And so that's why people who are more stressed are more sick. People who are angry, die younger. And so it affects, so where front part of the brain, if you live there more, then you're going to be healthier. Back part of the brain, you're going to be sicklier, just because of the chemical families that are involved with it. So it has its purpose. You just don't want to stay there very long. It's not a great thing to solve complex issues in your life in the back part. I see.
So, but what does that a process slows down based on if you practice so often, if you stay on a social media, or if you consuming information on digital media, it's a lot of information is emotional, or there's a lot of bad stuff, right? They want to get your attention, right? You're paying so much attention to this media. Does that slow the process down, that moving to front of the brain and you're just staying at the back of the brain, and it kind of slows down the process a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's all sorts of studies and articles and stuff that would definitely attest to that. I heard this idea that we are addicted to outrage. So it's a false high, and by the way, it's a temporary high, right? To get that, but the idea that we can get addicted to being angry. And so we'll look for things to make us angry. Why? Because it gives us there's a little dopamine involved. Yeah. There's a little bit of pleasure center there. And so absolutely. Yeah. So the more we feed that, the more we chase after it, then the more our body tends to work, dopamine tends to work with another chemical called epinephrine. And epinephrine is burns pathways to things. So if something gave us a real big thrill, epinephrine, we want to remember, how do we get there? We kind of like that thrill. So how do we get there? And so epinephrine kind of helps us burn a neural pathway to get back to that. That's why pornography is so addictive. But I believe outrage is at the same time, things that upset us, things that because there's that dopamine's involved. It's a little thrill. It's a little thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's easy for us to burn a bunch of neural pathways to things that are unhealthy for us, to things that are unhealthy emotions. The thing is, though, too, we feel great when we're bonded and connected to each other. We were talking, that's the beginning of our conversation, right? We feel good when we feel good about the people around us and where we are. So it still feels good to be in the front part of the brain. It's just, we can learn bad habits to get short boosts back there, and we can live in that and do that. So it's kind of what do you want to be happy about? You want to be happy that you feel connected to the people you care about and who care about you, and that you're making choices to care about people more and build those relationships. That's a better part of life to function in. Or you want the cheap thrill of anger, stress.
Well, I think more importantly, to understanding both sides, right? From a leadership or business standpoint, you just got to understand how you function. If you understand yourself, you can help your team better. You can help your people better. I remember reading a book from Neil Evell. He was this book called Indestructible. He was talking about, if we understand brain a little better, we can design products a little better. We can design services a little better to target whatever we want to target. What do we want to target emotions more? We want to target logic more. So if you understand better, we can design those products and services much better because you understand the brain a little better.
Absolutely, yeah. There was a study that came out a little over 5 years ago. I think it came out of Cornell University, and they were trying to figure out, are there any predictors to success? They followed around 71 different executives from 32 different companies that ranged anywhere from $50 million in revenue to $5 billion. So they're following around all these executives, I believe about 2 years. And they're just going, is there any predictors of whether or not you, me, anybody else will be successful? And right away at the beginning of the study, one obvious answer jumped to the top, and it stayed the number one answer throughout the study. And so the number one predictor of success is simply self-awareness. Kind of what you were saying. How well do you understand you? And that will be a lifelong lesson because you're always adjusting and changing and adapting and what have you. And but if you can become a student of you, and then you can better understand you and where you are in your leadership, and you can better manage that, and then you can better understand others and better manage other people.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, build better products and build better services.
Yeah.
So if you can at least start by studying you, then you'll get a good idea of how people are wired, and then you can, work more with other people and do well with them. Absolutely.
Well, awareness is the key, right? So, from our discussion, I learned that from you that, emotions and all that stuff was the back of the brain. And from feeling a little emotional, I can always see, now I can recognize, okay, I'm using a back of my brain. How do I bring it to the front? Okay, I need to change that little emotions. I need to get better. I need to think healthier. I need to think more logical. So just that little awareness, I think, changes that your approach to a lot of decisions when you make it.
Here's a simple thing too. You can do it. So that's excellent. You can, next time you're upset or angry, to go, okay, that I'm back here. I don't want to make any decisions while I'm back here. One of the things, and we learn techniques and stuff again in the Leader Effectiveness training, but one thing is just putting words to your feelings. And often saying them out loud, or maybe even telling somebody else, or if there's nobody else, at least maybe even telling yourself, I'm really upset right now that this guy just cut me off in traffic. Just simply saying that, all of a sudden it starts to force it to the front part of your brain, because you're using that you're trying to form the vocabulary. So you're almost, by trying to put it into words, how you're feeling, give it an emotional word and what you're feeling about what you're thinking. Just by doing that, you're almost kind of forcing it to go, okay, before I make any decisions, let me just acknowledge what I'm feeling. I'm afraid of what just happened here. I'm confused about what was just said in this meeting. And if you can just, it'll kind of force your brain to kind of figure it out. What are you feeling? And if you can put a word to it, you're starting to move back to the front part of your brain. So just a little technique you can do next time you feel that, you're like, uh-oh, and the blood boiling. I don't want to do anything that I'm going to regret. I want to make a better decision. Just try to put it into words, and either you can write it down is a good way to do that. Write down, I'm feeling this about this, or say it out loud. I'm feeling this about this, or tell somebody, I'm feeling this about this.
That's a great insight. Definitely. And I think when you when you play it back to yourself, right? If you write it down or you play it back, when you hear the sound of it, you're confused, if you don't want to be in that state, what's the other choice, right? So then you take action much faster. I think that's a great tip.
Here's an irony too. The moment you say it is the moment you feel it less.
Yeah.
So, the moment you're like, I'm so mad about this. Now you're not so mad. You're just a little mad. The moment I'm terrified. Well, now I'm just a little afraid. You're right. When you kind of see it,
we don't like the sound of it. We don't like the sound of it. I'm angry. We don't like the sound of it. You don't want to be angry. Then you change it right away, right? So.
Yeah. Well, you do. And part of it is just acknowledging it. Look, I have a background in I've been a pastor for a number of years. So there's no morality in feelings, which, there's no Bible verse that says there's a wrong way to feel. What we do with those feelings, can have moral consequences. Gotcha. But yeah, just if you're upset, it's okay to be upset. I think sometimes we don't like our emotions. And so for some reason, we don't give ourselves permission to have them, but they're there. It's kind of like grieving. You got to do it. And if you try not to do it, you'll still do it. It'll just come out in different ways. And so, you could wish all day long that you weren't an emotional being, and that the people around you aren't emotional beings. Or you can just accept the fact that you are, and at least try to identify those emotions, try to manage it
and deal with it.
Deal with it. And so, but you have organizations and leaders and people do, like leave the emotions at home or keep them out of the workplace. That's an impossible feat, even for them. And so, because it's just the way our brains are wired. We feel before we think. And so you might as well address how you're feeling. Yeah.
Very interesting. So talk about your journey a little bit, Tom. How do you get so good at, I don't think you have a medical background as well, or you just got, how do you get so good at this understanding brain and understanding human body? If you talk about a little bit your background.
I don't have a medical background. My wife is a nurse practitioner, so maybe that helps somehow. I don't know.
Okay.
No, I have.
But you have a very good understanding of how brain functions and how everything works.
Well, I love leadership. I love leadership, and I love that self-awareness idea, and it ties back to understanding how we're wired too. I mean, so there's a lot of it's just interesting to me, the science, and to do that, and to look at that and see what's coming out. And so and I've worked with other people who find that interesting as well. And so you're always gaining new information, or what's the term? Leaders are readers. So you're always learning something, right? Or at least audible listeners. But yeah, the journey for me. So really for me, I spent 20 years in vocational ministry, working at fairly large churches, and working with a lot of staff. I'd have teams of staff. But it's interesting because in non-for-profit, you tend to work with a lot of quote unquote volunteers. Now, what I've learned is it doesn't matter if you're for-profit or non-for-profit, everybody works with you and through you and for you as a volunteer.
Yeah.
They could all make money somewhere else. There's enough jobs. They don't want to work here. They could work somewhere else. They don't need you, they have, and so it's anybody who's chose to work around you, they have made that choice. Just like you make the choice to work with those people, at least for this season of your life. And so everybody around you is a volunteer. And so I realized there's a lot of similarities. Now, in my own journey, I started feeling more of a calling to bring biblical principles into secular industries. And felt it's time to go beyond the walls of the church. So I've been on a slower plan, really since about 2018. Kind of realized that I didn't feel a calling to get more involved inside the church, but to go beyond. And so on that path, I ended up writing and publishing a few books, two of which became bestsellers. And so that was great. And then had some people ask, hey, could you help me do that? And so I realized I had a team of people that had helped me, and I reached out to them, and we ended up accidentally starting a book publishing company. So, but we thought, sure, let's help other people get their voice out to the world and their message out to the world. And that I found that to be really rewarding. And so I do own a book publishing company, but my goal is to work myself out of a job. And so I don't run it. There's a CEO and a VP and a team of people who run that. And I check in, maybe about 15 minutes a week, just make sure they're feeling good. And then I had people say, hey, could you help me do that? I want to get out of my own company and get out of my own way. And so that kind of birthed a consulting company. And so I've always had a passion for leadership and people development. And I believe that's even a biblical idea. If you look at Jesus, he tells your job is to make disciples. You train up other people to do what you do, or better yet, do what I do. And so that's always been a passion. So to me, leadership development, whether within the nonprofit or profit sector, has always been something fascinating to me. And the other thing I love about leadership is that leadership is it's a skill, or better yet, a subset of skills. So if leadership is skills, then they're learnable. Anybody can get better at them, which I love that aspect about it too. If you want to learn, if you want to spend some time on it, if you want to work on those parts of your brain, you can. And it's that, you have that choice, and everybody has that ability. As long as they want to learn, we can all get better at this. And the better we get, the more people benefit from it, including ourselves. So that has been a passion. That has been that. I was doing some consulting. I'm actually buying a consulting business in the process of doing that right now from a friend too, that I was working with some of his clients. And so I have my clients, his clients, and I got some other things going on with some future clients. So it's like, I needed a home for it. So we just put together Two Penny Consulting, and that's become more my focus. So now I'm completely out of the church world, although I still love the staff and get to encourage them every once in a while, or help them out here or there if they get a little stuck. But yeah, going into the publishing company I own, the church, we were closing that door, but all with smiles and warm thoughts and hugs, and it's been a great journey there. And now it's opening up the door to help more and more businesses or people in business who want to get better at leadership. I think, the more we grow our leadership, the more our businesses tend to grow. The more we understand us and get out of our own way, the more enjoyable for us and everybody else around us. There you
Very
go. There's
interesting.
the summation.
No, very interesting. But before we go, I definitely want to get your take on that. I had a discussion with one of my colleagues, and we were talking about that on a leadership. And one of the items we were talking about, I want to see your take on it. Um, do you find that the value system in a leaders, because the attention span, what we're dealing with the social and all the digital media, that the grounding and the value system is a little bit challenged over the last few years? Do you find that's what leadership's a little bit challenged to stay grounded, even though your success or failure, stay grounded and stay focused on that? That's a little bit challenged over the last few years.
So let me make sure I understand the question. What I hear you saying is the idea that since the idea of shortening attention spans and so much short span of media or whatever, things like Instagram, right? Yeah. So we're kind of training our brains. I remember I have a communications degree. So I remember studying MTV back in the day and how they kind of had a rule when you're making music video, you can't hang on one shot for more than 3 seconds.
Yeah.
I was that. And now everything is music video style, to even movies, if it hangs on for, 10 seconds long, our brains don't know what to do, with a single shot, it's got to move. And so, yeah, so we've definitely media and the world around us changes for, shorter attention span. So it is.
Yeah. No, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So does that make it more difficult, man? So I already have the philosophy that any problems make new things possible. So I have a hard time going, there's something we got to get around. No, I mean, what opportunity does that then open? If we have shorter attention span, then that requires, less info, less effort to get an important message out. There's some benefits that how can we take advantage of that is really where my mind automatically goes with that. What does this now make possible? But I think, okay, I'll say this. I think, yes, we obviously have that. We have, we're more anxiety and stress medications than we've ever been before. We're on, we're doing things to our brain that weren't available to our brains, hundreds of years ago. So sure, are those things happening? Can that make it difficult? Yes, but the universal principles that we still want to belong somewhere and want to add value to it. We want to feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. Those principles aren't going away. And if we're not getting those needs met, then what I've noticed is the consumer will adjust where they go looking. So maybe we want in our marketing or things to keep it short, simple. Great. Let's get shorter and simpler, in my opinion. Use those as opportunities. But the marketing does not matter if you can't feel like you're a part, you belong to it, and that it's real. We need that reality. So to me, those are just the mediums and the methodologies, and maybe we need to adjust them. But it won't. There's a great book called Delivering Happiness. It's the story of Zappos story, and at one point they're in their story and their kind of rise to eventually Amazon buys them out, Amazon uses their culture. But at one point in the story, they're trying to figure out, there's 3 things we need to focus on. We need to focus on our brand. We need to focus on our culture, and we need to focus on our pipeline. In other words, we got multiple locations. Anybody who interacts with us, we want them to have a consistent experience. And after focusing on those 3 things, they've really quickly come to an idea of, we just need to focus on one of those things. and it was culture. In other words, they discovered that your brand, your advertising, your marketing, your brand is just a late reflection of your culture.
Yeah.
And if you get your culture right, then your pipeline will be just fine.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you can spend a lot of time, money, and try to be, fancy, and you should be with your marketing. But if you're a terrible company, people find out. It doesn't matter. You can do a great commercial about your business, but at the end of the day, I'm going to go do what everybody else does. I'm going to go look at the reviews.
Yeah.
I'm going to take some stranger's opinion, but somebody who interacted with you on a personal level and go, did they enjoy it? How do they feel about interacting with your company? Yeah. And so if you can't get that right, it doesn't matter the rest. And I think we still need that. And that can take time.
Yeah, no, as I'm building a company as well, and the reason I asked was, it's not a shortage of information anymore. We're in an era where a lot of information around you, right? So there's so much distraction, so much information, and the skill set that required is how do you navigate through this information and stay focused to your, values, stay focused to, true core you are, and that's what I was, the reason I asked, because definitely. This is a new skill set you need these days. There's so much around you. How do you stay focused on your goals, on your values, and you stay grounded and keep moving forward? Because there's so many distractions, and I think that's a skill a lot of people need to build, whether it's a leadership or the team. You got to build that for yourself, and then you got to teach that your team as well, because there's so much information, distractions around you. You got to stay focused and keep moving forward in the right direction.
So I can tell you some of the things I do, but better yet, you just brought up what it makes possible. In other words, you're right. There's so much around us. There's so much stuff. You know what a great product would be? One that would help us, tailor it to us. What do we need to focus on, right? In other words, what does it make possible? That's the right question. It's like, okay, what kind of product can we create to then, or service provide that helps people, tailor it to them and what they need to focus on, what their goals are and stuff, and help them hone it in. And there are some products like that. There's things that'll turn off your notification, to do that. So, but to me, that's the right question. That's the problem. You're right. But man, does that open up some good product and service possibilities. Yeah. That's the right question to answer. But for me, and I'm using products and I'm using services, or I'm listening to people or reading people who help me answer that question. And to hone in and to do that. So I have a morning routine. Yeah. I have apps on my phone that help me stay organized, or help me, focus in on what's important. I have things in my, calendar things on my phone where I can prioritize based off the schedule. First, I'm going to do this before I let any of this outside information go to. One thing, I think this was from 4 Hour Workweek. That's a great book in terms of productivity. And there's tons of
from Tim.
Tim Ferriss, yeah. And so, but I think he's the one talk about not checking your emails till noon. That most problems solve themselves by noon. So there's just certain things like not letting it in until you've taken care of the most important parts of your day. Not I used Microsoft To Do as my work checklist, and one of the reasons I do that is because it used to be Wunderlist. And then Microsoft To Do bought them, but they kept this feature, and that is I got tasks, but I can star them. Not all tasks are equal each day, and so the rule of thumb is I never have more than 3 things starred in a day. So 1 to 3, and in other words, if I got nothing else done today, but I got that 1 or 2 or maybe 3 things done, it would be a great day. It would move the needle forward. And to do that, so
just gain focus on the right things. This is what's important to me.
But that could change each day. Today it's these 3, but I get to boom. And it's just a star. I might have 12 things on my list, but only 1 and a max of 3 gets a star. So then I know at least I move the needle. This is the most important. You can prioritize, and it's a tool that allows me to kind of trim that out. Just put a simple star on one, and then I know what my focus is. I know what will be if I can check that box, it'll be a winning day. So. Yeah.
Very interesting.
There's tools to do that.
I had somebody on my podcast. I can't think of the name. I think Cheryl. She's also on an expert at a time. So she has that to-do list, and she also, it was very interesting what she mentioned, that she keeps a list she wants to tackle that during the day, but she also have a not to-do list. So she keeps a to list. That I have a to-do list, I have a not to-do list, what I'm not going to do. So she's saying that she maintains those to lists, helps her gain focus, and also keeps her reminder open what not to do today or what not to do during this hours, and I'm going to do the after hours. So it keeps her focus. So it was interesting for me to learn that not only to-do list, but not what not to do. She keeps to list.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. I'm going through a great book, actually working with a client too, going through the same book. I'm like, it's so good and applies to what they're going through, called Boundaries for Leaders by Beautiful. Dr. Henry Cloud. And his whole thing is, we get what we get based off 2 things. What we create, task lists, and what we allow, the not to do. If they can make it through the boundaries, then that's why it's going wrong. So we got to choose what's allowed and what's not allowed, and what are we creating within it? What are we trying to get done?
Very interesting.
I find that absolutely. There's another great book came out a couple of years ago called Distraction, and it was the whole idea that the opposite of distraction isn't necessarily focus. Sometimes we think, if I focus, I won't be distracted. by definition, the opposite of distraction is traction, to be on track. And so it's okay to go, you know what, I'm going to let some social media in, but not until 50 minutes from now. That's the plan. And I'm going to give myself a 10-minute social media break, or I'm going to, go goof off for this. I'm going to go play video games for a half hour. That's great as long as you plan to do it. Then you're on track with your plan. Distraction is when this is my time to work on this project, and wait, I got an alert. Will Smith did what, or Tom Brady ate what for breakfast? And all of a sudden you're on this. Now that's distract. You got off track.
Yeah.
So there's times. Just remember again, your brain burns more calories than any other part of your body. So your brain wants breaks, is going to take breaks. And you need to give it breaks. And so it's okay to do something somewhat meaningless or, dumb or, brainless. We need to do that. We need escapes. We need those things. That's not necessarily an unhealthy thing. If we live there our whole life, or live there a major chunk of our life, it's probably an unhealthy thing. And if we don't plan to do it, and yet, and it throws off the rest of our day, that's probably not a healthy thing. But
wow.
It's okay, yeah.
Yeah, I know we all learn from books. I learned so much from our discussion from you as well, Tom. Where can people find your books? It's 4 books were already published, or is it 4 or 5 books? 4 books.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Well, let's call it 4.5. So we just put out a revised edition of one of the books. So there's really 4 books that are out there. They're on Amazon that you can check out. So probably an easy way to kind of do that and stuff is actually to take advantage of the consulting website. Even if you're not interested in our consulting, what we do, but if you go to 2pennyconsulting.com, it's TWO pennyconsulting.com. There's an Our Team button, and they got a little bio, but it has like where all the books are and all that, the podcasts used to host, and some speaking engagement stuff. If you want to, see any of that stuff or hear more about some things and to do it, just get some free information there. If you want on things, you can definitely go there and check it out there. But yeah, that'd be the easiest way, I think, is just if you go to 2Penny Consulting, that's the most recent thing that I'm actively involved in and will be involved in, and we'll keep that up to date, and where people can go ahead and check out those books and check out some more information on some of the things we've.
Yeah, I'm going to include a link below the video as well for the website, and definitely I learned so much, and I will encourage people who are listening, who are watching. Definitely, get a copy of your book, or more importantly, reach out to you for conversation. I learned so much. Who knows where the conversation can take us, right? Yeah. So I will say, connect with you, have a chat with you, and see where that takes. What is the best way to connect with you, Tom? Is that a LinkedIn, or what's the best way to reach out to you?
So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm typically maxed out at about the 30,000 connectors, but you can still reach out to it. And if one drops off, I'll put you back on. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, you can. I'll give you. If you go to 2pennyconsulting.com, there's a schedule a consult button. It's a free 30-minute chat, and right now it's you and me, the way we have it set up. So I'm handling most of those chats right now and can do that. I'll give my email. Why not? It's tom@2pennyconsulting.com there too. So if somebody wants to reach out via email, tom@2pennyconsulting.com. And right now I'm fielding most of those and be able to do that. But yeah.
Good. Yeah, I know, great work. Definitely, I enjoy our discussion, learned so much from you, and definitely I think people who are watching, you deliver a lot of value. People are going to enjoy the discussion. So I want to acknowledge you for your time, Tom. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me on, and thanks for all the great questions. Really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.